Welcome to the DIY3DTech.com channel.
Okay, so now we're back. We got the extra pieces. One of the things that's not clear is which side is up in the instructions. So I am going to assume that the Melmine side goes up. So I've got the remaining pieces at the bottom of the gantry, and I'm just again cleaning them up with a little alcohol, as you saw in the last part, because there's definitely seems to be a lot of oil on here, and I'm not sure why oil would be involved in the Melmine cutting, but again, you can really see that this is getting the something off there. Clean these up a little bit. Windex might even work a little bit better. I don't know. It cuts the grease, but it kind of meshes around a little bit. Anyways, we can clean that up a little bit better later. At least it's not going to get all over our hands. So these seem to be somewhat symmetrical in this fashion. But one of the things to note from the instructions is the location of this, because we will slide one of the motor sets, I think actually this one, through there. So one of the things that we need to do is actually cut away these the zip strip. You want to be careful you're not cutting the wire. So we'll cut that back. Surprisingly, it looks like more cable here than I had anticipated. However, what it's doing is it's showing this fed through here. You can see this. And so we're going to feed this through. And it's showing the wiring going to the bottom. Now, I'm not so sure that's the best. Well, maybe. Let's see how it lines up. It does seem to line up. Yep. So, interestingly enough, that seems to line up just perfectly, which I guess is a good thing. So basically, you can see the wires coming out of the motor through this bottom piece here. These two tabs go into here, so it's a pretty well aligned that the motor is offset enough to where it's coming off. It's not perfect though, but it's pretty close. So we'll set that in there. Then basically what happens is another one of these blocks goes in there, sets in there like that, and then we take this block. Now this block, the instructions say, is a bit critical. Z-mount, ensure that the circular opening goes to the upper left of the assembly. So it seems like that we have to turn this, so we drag some stuff around. So it's now orientated like this. And we gotta cut this off. This one too. Probably would suggest to have cut these off in advance, so this cable might have relaxed a little bit more over time. I live and learn, I guess. That's why I'm doing this video. So I need to look at the instructions. Now this seems to simply sit in this opening. Now, let's see if I can't maneuver this whole thing around. See, it sits in this opening, and these wires kind of stick out of here. So that's the sort of how it goes. And so I think the actual, I think it's actually going to go more so like this, although the instructions aren't hugely clear about this part. It appears that this is going to go out this back side. Sort of like that. But one of the things fortunately it doesn't say too much about, well, I'm not sure how that can, I think we just learned an important lesson here, because there is an orientation. So everybody on YouTube, you've now learned something. There's an orientation to this. So I now have to once again remove, well, not once again, for the first time, remove these screws. So this is an important part, kiddies, is there is a perspective to the placement of this. Now, when I bolted this on, I followed the instructions and put it where it suggested this hole. Remember this hole? I talked about this hole. Well, appears that that is not how it works. You can kind of see, remember I was mentioning about recessing into the melamine. You can see where it's recessed. So we're going to pull this off, and actually, because you can probably see how the wires for the motor come out, which I showed on this one, how they also kind of came out. Well, the perspective of this block because these are the counter blocks, and these are where the rods, I'm assuming, go into for the uprights. So this actually goes this way. So we have a block that goes in here. This goes on top of here, and then that gets pressed down. Now I can tell you that's a little bit tight, so let's now this is a little bit confusing because it does say one goes in here, but there's no counter. Oh, yes there are. Yes there are. It's right next to the motor. Okay, so I don't know if you guys caught that, but that was a little bit confusing. There is tabs right next to the motor housing. Unlike you see the standalone ones, so it does actually go together. So now, as I'm doing this video, you're facing me, so notice this hole here. So that is important, because what we're going to do is we're going to orientate this block here, and again, if I so notice the hole here, because this is where we're going to stick our uprights for the gantry. So now I got to go back to bolting this together in the proper perspective, and my motor's twisted a little bit. I've got to use this to actually pull. This one can grab a bit, so this will help me pull the motor up a bit. So tighten these back up, pulling this up a bit. Again, I'm not getting quite the, I might have to lift this up a little bit. This is blocked kind of. I'm going to break the tabs off, but I need a little bit of leverage to push that motor up in there. Okay, so it's gripping a bit. Sorry, this might get a little bit boring to snap down over the collar of the NEMA motor. But you're kind of learning this as I'm going through and learning the assembly of this. So again, now we've put this back in there. We line this up, slide this back down. I hate to set it on those. I guess I'll just leave it. I'm going to just go back through real quick and see, because it kind of snapped there, it wasn't pulled tight, so I just want to make sure that these are once again tightened. So now we got the base part of the chassis together. These seem to be actually pretty much ambidextrous, and that I'm assuming we can put these. Now, it's interesting that these are melamine. I'm going to put sort of the grody side, or still the little bit dirty side on the inside. So I'm going to flip this up on end a little bit, and hopefully you can still see this as I go through and do this. And so I'm going to put this on here. It's interesting, the design of this. This is all pretty much pressure fit. And I can see where some of this might be a challenge to line up. And I can see where maybe a small rubber mallet or something might be used to coax this all together. Because I can see a couple pieces that might need a little bit of persuading to fit in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video here. I'm going to have to do a little bit of persuading to kind of get this to come together. And you probably don't want to watch me do that, nor probably do I want you to see me do this. But to kind of get all of this aligned, and then we'll be back in a few minutes.